I used to hear that a lot, like refer out. Like it's nice. Like, it works for me. I
Yeah.
have insurance. I'm grateful for that. But it's like, how about the people who don't? And now they're
Yeah.
going WebMD and like, yo, my tendinopathy's flaring up. I'm
Yeah.
about to
Not
die,
that.
bro.
Yeah. It's knee
Damn,
cancer.
it's neat. Now, when you gave me this subject, bro, I was like, man, I don't know shit. This is after reading this, man, I don't even know what I know. But where did
I
this
don't know what I
come? Like, where
know.
did this come about for in your head, bro? Like, why did you curse this on me?
I can't divulge on the show where this came from, but it came from a very funny moment at a course. Uh, but we call it the Huberman problem, the Huberman dilemma. Today we're talking about the circle of competence. Very hard to say. But trying to understand your circle of competence, know when you're working in it, know when you're working outside of it, and how to work outside of it, and then know how to expand it. With the biggest takeaway being, it doesn't matter how big it is, right? It doesn't matter how much domain knowledge you have, knowing that, like, if you're new in the field, you can only have so much, and that's okay. What's really important, no matter what level you're at, is understanding when you're working at the boundaries, understanding when you're working outside of the things that you know well, knowing that you're going to be working at a disadvantage. And what that means in our space as a coach, working at a disadvantage looks like putting out protocols or putting people through programs that most likely won't get the outcomes that you're looking for. Again, because you just lack the domain knowledge. And that's all right. So, how can we better work around it? But this came from some Hubie slander. And I know he's your boy. But you know, unpacking his domain expertise, right? So if your circle of competence is an area where you have a lot of earned knowledge, so where have you been working in? What are you an expert in? He's a neuroscientist giving out protocols for sauna, for movement, for, basically everything under the sun, for smoking weed. I don't know. He's got protocols for everything. And at a certain point, you got to step back and be like, listen, like science isn't directly like 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 against all fields. Like just because I know a lot about physics doesn't mean I know a lot about chemistry. Just because I know a lot about the human body as it relates to exercise doesn't mean I know a lot about the human body as it relates to pregnancy, right? So like, it's not all apples to apples here. It's more complex than that. So it's like taking a step back and it's like, all right, is he the one that I should be getting all of this information from? Or should I just maybe stick to the things like where he's a little bit more of a domain expert, or when he brings someone on who's a domain expert and they have like a scientific conversation? So I think for me, that's where this conversation initially started. And then it unraveled into what does this mean for coaches? How can coaches use this concept? And then it further unraveled into maybe we should stop doing the podcast because we don't actually know anything.
It was this close.
And
I
I
was like,
think
bro, let's delete everything we ever talked about, every show, because I don't even know what I was saying, if it was even right.
so. It sounds like
Yeah,
you're deep in a mental dilemma right now. No Nelly.
bro.
Got him.
Man.
Got him.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Why it had to be okay. You got me. But yes, top of that Dunning Mountain, the Dunning Kruger Mountain, where was I think I know. I think I know some stuff, or I thought I
Mm.
know some stuff, right? But give me an example. Like, I'm a coach right now, like literally right now. I'm not talking about my past, JT. But
Yeah.
what do you tell me an example of me being outside of my circle of competence?
Mm. So I think for me, the biggest one right now, again, like we all have blind spots. We all have things we don't know. You cannot know everything, especially in this field, and that's okay. But for me, the biggest thing is pain. Like understanding pain, why it occurs, how to manage it, what to do about it within a session, how to improve it over time. Like pain for me is one of those things that it's just a blind spot for me. And like looking at or just thinking about how you improve your circle of competence, build it out, make it stronger over time. A lot of it's, doing the work. Like you're putting in the hard yards, you're coaching on the floor, working with these specific populations, whatever it might be. And then you're also doing the work on the back end of, digging into research, reading books, talking to other coaches, like learning as much as you can about a very specific topic area. So for me, that's improving performance in mostly, college age athletes and general population members, right? Like that's where I'm spending a majority of my time. But then from there, like I've always been in scenarios, not always, but a lot of the time I've been in scenarios where I've had access to a physical therapist or like access to a physical therapist in the area that they could go to. So when someone was in pain that was beyond discomfort, like, yeah, no, my knee like legitimately hurts, I cannot squat. Well, it's like, cool, we're going to avoid it today. And then you can go see this person. Right. So then that was just the way that we operated. So then from there, now I've never been pressed to learn more about pain. And quite frankly, it's just never something that's interested me a ton. Probably should bring on a pain expert. Sidebar. give him an interview on the show.
I know a neuroscientist.
No. I know a nephrologist who knows a lot about knees. But it's so because of that, like now when I'm working with someone one-on-one and they're in pain, like I'm aware that that's a boundary. And I think for a time, like I went through a knee pain period myself, and it was like, oh, knee pain, just a patellar tendinopathy. I'm just going to do some isos and that fixes it. Like that's how you solve knee pain. When in reality, probably deeper than that. It's probably more intricate than that.
How do you know you're in that boundary though?
I think it's when
because
it
really
boils
quick
down to
that
it.
point of you just mentioned with the knee pain. Let's just say I did come in with patellar tendinopathy, right? You read some papers, maybe 2 or 3 sets of 45 seconds each side, probably clean it up a bit. We'll have some analgesic effects. And then first you feel like, oh, you solved it, right? So how do you know that within the context of pain and an example like that you are in the boundary, and after you reduced or even relieved the knee pain there, you almost feel like you're an expert there. Like, oh, I solved knee pain.
Right. It
So how
becomes
do
like
you
a
know it's more
self-fulfilling
than that?
prophecy.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this must work for everybody because it worked for these 3 people, and like this is the solution. I think it's how many levels of it depends are you going through? How many areas are you looking into? How many questions are you asking to find the right answer? If it's just like someone presents with pain, boom, this is the only answer I got. And when in reality, like other than rest, other than take some time off, that's the only answer I got. Is we're gonna do some 2x30, 2x45, whatever, accumulate 3 minutes of split squat isos or leg extension isos, something like that, right? I understand what that's potentially doing to the tendon, right, and different aspects of the tendon, the weaker aspects of the tendon, and things like that. But in reality, it doesn't lead me to fully understand the full scope of that person's pain. So in that scenario, giving more answers than internally or to them asking questions. Whereas someone came to me and was like, hey, how do I get, more jack? Or how do I get bigger biceps? Like I might give them a simple answer in some cases, but in other cases I might try to understand more about that person. So I'm going to ask them more questions before I just say like this is definitively the answer. And I think like again back to what you said about the Dunning-Kruger effect, when you're on that peak of like, hey, I just learned something and maybe it worked for me or maybe it worked for one of my clients and now it's like this is the answer. Like if you're feeling that way, that kind of like unearned confidence, you might be on the edges or outside of your circle.
Yeah. Okay, now that's a good point. I think going back to the example of the pain, I used to feel like that, right? I used to feel like, oh, come to me with pain, go through some isos, and then you're good for the session. For me, what stuck out of realizing I was outside of my circle of competence was they kept coming back with it for one. So I'd have
Yeah.
to do that.
Just been like
That
7 months.
I'd have to do that ISO every session. I'm like, wait, I'm not really solving pain for one. I'm just kind of
Yeah,
giving
yeah,
them
yeah, yeah,
analgesic
yeah.
effect. And two, I don't know how they got it. Like I
Yeah.
don't know the source of the pain. Like we might have protocols of how to reduce the or give them some relief in this example of it. Most tendinopathy um, occurrences, whether it be the patella, the Achilles, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like you said, like we don't know the source of it,
Mm.
and the fact that it keeps coming back more often times than not. That's probably outside of our circle,
Yeah.
which is for me mind blowing. I'm like, man, I don't know. I can give you some relief, but I can't solve your pain. But and I also don't know why the hell it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And pain, again, like, not to make this an episode about pain, but like it's the complex. I don't even know where to begin as far as understanding the complexity of it. Like understanding the biopsychosocial model of knowing that yes, there could be, and likely is in this instance, like maybe a physical contributor, but there's also social aspects, there's psychological aspects,
Too
right?
many,
And
too
so
many.
I don't know where to start.
Right.
And so for me to just confidently give an answer, and again, maybe it works,
And
right?
I think that's the
Maybe it
problem.
does work. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's the
It might
problem
be. It might be.
because I've had instances where I've done that for people, and then they come 2 months later and like, oh, solved, it's gone. And then for me, I'm thinking, oh, what I did was a thing that you know
Mm-hmm.
solved their pain, and now I'm thinking I'm an expert just because I've been doing this one protocol or method for the patellar or Achilles tendinopathy when it could have been so many other factors that helped along the way with that, and it might not be the same solution for the next person, right? So I think
Exactly.
that's for me was the light bulb moment of wait, maybe I was not the most important thing that really helped with
Yeah.
that. So when we're realizing we're in it, or sorry, when we're really realizing we're outside of it, you touched on it a little bit. How do we operate there, knowing that there will be overlaps in our, especially in our industry, like
Yeah.
all aspects of health, life through
Yeah.
conversation.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
How do we play in that circle or
Yeah.
outside of it?
And I was literally about to say, like, our industry especially, but again, I have very little frame of reference for every other industry. Like
Mm.
maybe in finance, you're constantly working outside of your circle of competence.
Mm.
I can't speak to finance. I do not know, but at least in my experience, if you're working with people one on one, if you're working with athletes in a private sector environment and it's just coaches there, you're 1000% either way, no matter where you're at, but you're 1000% going to have to operate outside of your circle of competence. And that's okay. But I think, especially in those settings, you're going to have to operate outside of your circle of competence. Like, personal training clients, general population, or athlete, talking about nutrition, we're talking about pain, we're talking about psychology, we're talking about, like, those are conversations that are going to happen because, if you're if you're a good coach, you're building relationships, you're building trust, they're going to look to you as an expert. Like that's just what it is. So, it's how can we best help them is one, first, knowing your boundaries, right? Knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. So knowing where that boundary of your circle of competence is. But then, like you just asked, how do we operate around it or operate outside of it? I think for me, if I can't refer out, if I can't take time to expand it, one of the biggest things I'm looking at, can I perform something that's safe to fail? Meaning that if this goes wrong, if this is the wrong answer, it's not going to blow up in our faces. right? So it's not going to fully do this person a disservice. They're not going to get hurt. They're not going to get messed up because I'm doing it at a level where it's relatively safe. So like for the pain example, you know, I feel like something like ISOs, for the most part, are safe to fail. I guess in some instances maybe they wouldn't be, because then you get that temporary analgesic effect and you just train your face off and then you just kind of end back up in the same spot. But generally speaking, they're safe to fail. For me, though, oftentimes I'm working with a client in pain. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to, like, can we do some movement? Does that improve the pain? Is this actually pain? Is this discomfort? And try to understand, where they're at with it. Try to understand some of their, recent training or recent activity. But then in the session, we're just going to work around that area. Like, I'm going to modify the session so I'm not further exacerbating pain in that area, because again, I don't know, based on what they're presenting, if movement's going to help it or if movement's going to hurt it. Right. So in this instance, I'm going to just modify the session so I can work around it. And then, given the area that they're in, so if they're in the greater Philadelphia area, I got PTs in the Rolodex, and we're going to try to, if it's actually pain and it's persistent, then try to get them to someone who I trust, who I know knows a hell of a lot more than me.
Sure. What do you think is a less expensive or more what's the word I'm looking for? A way to have a more sourceful way to refer, knowing that a lot of people don't have insurance, for one. Two, access, I think it comes to mind. So when it comes to referring to a PT, I know we say that a lot. Refer out. What else do you think we can do as coaches to get somebody connected with somebody who is an expert in that area, whether it be sleep, pain, nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, probably leverage social media to a certain degree. Like if there's people on there that you trust, and doing, slightly less expensive virtual consultations and things like that, or who have educational resources where you can try to, expand your circle, or,
Yeah.
things like that. But do you have anything in mind specifically?
No, I think because we as coaches typically come get our clients' problems or questions, and I know for me, I just kind of say, all right, let me do some research and I'll get back to you with the answer. I think
Yeah.
it'd be beneficial for you both to learn together, right? To educate. Like, here's the resource that I'm gonna read and look into. I want you to do the same, and we can come back and let's see what we come up with, because I think there's a educational opportunity there, right? In terms of
Yeah.
what you're not an expert with, and they're probably more experts about their body than you are to a certain degree. So I've been trying to play around with that and understanding this is a partnership, right, of a client to coach, and how do we foster that within the outside, or working on the outside of that circle. So I think for a lot of folks who don't have access to like a physical therapist for whatever reason, that might be a interesting way to really just help educate themselves and understand a little bit more, right? And maybe they can do smaller rocks that you might, or big rocks that you didn't even know that you
Yeah.
could help, like drinking water or something, right? And we're always focused on the localized area, and maybe they just needed to have their tissues a little bit healthier in that sense. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of opportunities there to help with that, because I used to hear that a lot, like refer out, like it's nice, it works for me. I
Yeah.
have insurance. I'm grateful for that. But it's like, how about the people who don't? And now they're
Yeah.
going WebMD and like, yo, my tendinopathy's flaring up. I'm
Yeah.
about to
Not
die,
that.
bro.
Yeah. It's knee
This
cancer.
is neat. So no, I mean, not to go deeper into that, but really, when it comes to understanding again how we're operating outside of it as coaches, referring out, we have these tools as we're learning. and the circle gets bigger, how do we do that in a way of professionalism or just confidence?
Yeah. For me, it's like approaching everything with a lot of curiosity and a lot of humility, and knowing that humans are complex, this field is complex, there's not one right answer. Like, yes, there's probably a best answer for every situation, but that doesn't mean that other things won't work, maybe just as well or slightly less as well. But so I think it's being okay with that, understanding that. And again, if you're approaching things with curiosity and humility, right? Like you go to a weekend course and you learn something new. Now it's not like, okay, I understand everything. Boom, here we go. But like, let's say you go to an FRC course, like I think we talked about before we jumped on, right? You learn about FRC, you learn about RPR, PRI, whatever acronym. You go to that course. Then when you're implementing it with your clients, again, a lot of these things are safe to fail. Like if you're doing PRI with your client, their lungs aren't going to collapse. Like at the very worst, you're wasting time, and that's okay, generally speaking. So as you're using it, you're being curious about how they're responding, what's happening. You know that you might not have the best answer yet, but you're looking for it. And to a certain degree, you're upfront with that with your clients. Like I think it's, obviously how we communicate with our clients really matters. And I think to a certain degree, it's okay to be like, hey, we're trying something here. Like I'm trying to find the best answer for you right now. Let's see if this works. If not, we're going to keep experimenting.
Yeah.
But I'm going to continuously work to find the best answer to or the best solution for whatever you're experiencing, whatever your goal is. And I think, at least in my experience, a lot of clients take well to that. But I mean, I think it's up to your best judgment as a coach to decide, which clients you're going to communicate that to. But then as you're doing this, as you're implementing things, you're continuously asking coaches who know more than you, who have used it longer than you successfully. You're continuously looking into research or reading articles, whatever it might be, to try to understand this at a deeper and deeper, almost like principles-based level. And you spend, 6 months, a year, 2 years, in this kind of cycle. And then you can look back and say, wow, this actually is now some earned knowledge. But I've put in the work to fully understand how this goes. So I can kind of cut through and understand all the it depends, see the bigger picture, and start to get to, better answers for my clients. And like, does that mean you know everything? No. Right? But it means you have a way better understanding. You're way more competent than when you first started.
So, two things. We talk about curiosity a lot.
Mm.
Humility, what does that mean?
Oh, what Kendrick say? He say, sit down, be humble.
I was gonna say the asterisk Drake one, but never mind. Sit down, be humble.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I can rip a dictionary definition for humility off the noggin, but I think for me, it's just like, it's understanding that you might not have and probably don't have all the answers. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't think it's inherently like, it's not like you're not confident. Like I think they can go hand in hand to a certain degree. Especially how you deliver things to your clients, how you communicate things to your clients.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's just an understanding of, I don't have all the answers right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have an imperfect understanding of this topic right now. But also knowing that that's okay, and you probably will for the rest of your life because this shit is so complicated. So or can be so complicated.
Yeah. No, I think that's important to call out because I think curiosity is often talked about in a lot of industries and a lot of podcasts and self-development. But humility, for some reason, I don't see as often, but I do see it as important because it's part of the whole picture of like knowing that there's things that you don't know, and then that actually builds confidence. All right. So in this example of expanding our knowledge, like I'll go to weekend courses all the time, and I remember going back to when I first started, I'm like, oh, this is a template of programming. I know programming, bro. You
Yeah.
know, this is like this is nice. Pros gave me this, so I'm gonna use this template forever. And for some reason, I'm the programming person. But when it's now, I'm starting to learn like that was just a template. That was just one example of how you structure
Yeah.
a day. There's you know there's principles that can really blend well with any program, but I think realizing that when I had less questions about certain things and just more answers, I would just and now I'm understanding like maybe I did not know every single part of that aspect within that. So it's like for example, programming. It's not too
Mm.
long ago when somebody would ask me, I'm like, they asked me why I have this programmed in there. It was like a squat, first session. I'm like, I actually don't know. Like I just seen it every, you know,
Yeah.
every program I've ever done, every program that was given to me. But do I actually know why a back squat was implemented first after some leg extension? Like I didn't know for
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and I started to understand a little bit more of like there's just one way to think about it, and now it just that circle is opened up. Like, bro, I don't know anything, man. Come on, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
going back to having that curiosity and having that humility in any course or anything that we learn is key to build confidence, right? To
Mm.
know where you're competent and where you're not competent. So this has been a good lesson for me to really reflect and like, man, how I communicate, how I deliver certain things will be at least a little bit more thoughtful in this
Yeah.
sense. So
As you're talking, one thing, something just popped in my mind, uh, in relation to how do you know when you're in it, and I was thinking about humility when you're talking about it there. And the most humbling thing for me is teaching. Like that's the one thing that lets you know that you don't know something as well as you thought you knew it, as either trying to teach it or when you're teaching it or when you're unpacking it or when you're doing a practical. Like a coach has a deeper understanding or a different understanding of like, oh shoot, I never even approached the problem from this lens, or I wasn't even thinking about this variable that I should have been thinking about. Damn, I might have to go back kind of the drawing board and try to really understand this so I can better teach it. So I think we talked about the Feynman technique a couple of times, but try to simplify it and teach it to another coach. Try to simplify it and teach it to one of your members, right? Like, do you have the ability to do that? Can you go forwards and backwards, right? So can you boil it down to its deepest principles, meaning like I understand why this happens or why this works. So like, how does someone get stronger? Like, what are the neuromuscular adaptations that lead to strength? Like, can you go that way? And then can you simplify a program and explain it to a member to a way that they understand it? Right? If you can't do those things or do those things well, then you're likely on the edge of your circle of competence.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a great example. I think now to really like start to bundle this up and get some good takeaways for everyone
Yeah.
as a coach, I think it's a responsibility to really help educate our clients that we're helping along the journey, right? Because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times, going back to what we were talking about, we're accidentally correct. We're accidentally solving problems, and what I mean by that is like we're not giving the tools for a lot of our clients to help solve those problems or even help prevent problems in the future by
Mm-hmm.
hey, let's just do this. All right, you're good. All right, next thing, right? And then now it's not a good relationship to help foster, right? And again, what comes to mind here is the education process of both you and the member, which I think is really key in any coaching relationship.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think we should just learn blindly, teach blindly, when we, and there has to be certain pieces within that where we have to, have that responsibility of like learning together, teaching together, knowing that there will be blind spots. But on the other side of that too, when you talk about humility, I don't think, because I think this conversation could easily be taken as like, you don't know anything, so don't be confident with it. Like, that's not what we're saying, but it's because with humility, there's also knowing your strengths, right? Knowing that what the things that you do know to a certain degree that can actually be helpful, which is why we're in this career. Like, so I think understand that a lot of the strengths that we do have as coaches can change people's lives, but within the circle of competence, we have to understand where we are with that, so we don't reverse that either.
Yeah.
So that's a big takeaway for me. Anything comes to your mind when you were reading about this for what helps you as an educator, coach?
I love that. I love that call out. When you're in your circle, own that shit. Like, you should be confident because that's your circle. Like, go crazy. And again, I think, what we said up top, just want people to know, like, it doesn't matter how big the circle is, kind of like you said, like, this isn't like no one knows anything, and we shouldn't be confident. Like, it doesn't matter how big your circle is. If you're new, it's probably small. If you've been in the field for a while, hopefully you've worked on expanding it. But the more important thing to take away is you need to know when you're working on the edges of it. You need to know when you're working outside of it, knowing that not just for like ego reasons, but for what really matters of, all right, am I actually doing the people in front of me a disservice potentially by being too confident in the delivery or the protocols or whatever I'm doing, that the things that fall outside of my circle. So that's, for me, that's always a good reminder. Like, I feel like once a year I'll come across this model, like someone's talking about it, and it's just always a good reminder to just like check yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I was probably being a little too confident in this area. I'm gonna chill out, maybe learn a little bit more, maybe ask some more questions.
Yeah.
But
no, that's good. I hope a lot of listeners at least take some time to reflect a little bit here and see what they're actually confident with or overconfident with.
Look at you, JT. 30-minute show. Look at you.
I know.
Look at
I'm
you.
ashamed.
Look
I'm
at
ashamed,
you,
bro. I wanted 8 hours.
You went to
One day.
Rogan Podcast Academy. They're failing you right now. Sorry.
One day. And what's
no.
any
No.
I was gonna say, come on, bro.
No.
Just one book. I wanted one good read from you. Recommend a good read for people.
It's right here. The Creative Act: A Way of Being by Rick Rubin, the music producer, is very good. I've been really obsessed with art recently.
The Creative Act.
The Creative Act: A Way of Being, Rick Rubin.
Okay, Phil the Philosopher. I love it, bro.
Tap in. Where can people find you? I'm not letting you drag this out any longer.
All right, on Instagram, CoachJT.HB. I'm sorry.
HP. You can find me on Instagram at Nashville. You can find the show on IG and YouTube at Pushin Performance. No G. As always, if you're rocking with the show, please leave your boys a 5-star rating. Leave us a little comment, a little review in there. Much appreciated. And if you're really rocking with it, share with a friend, share with a colleague, someone you think who can level up by tapping in with us. And we will catch you all next time.
Peace.
Peace.